Moonlight pooled upon the silk of the king's pavilion like spilt milk across green marble, whitening the royal stag stitched into emerald walls of fabric. Near the entrance stood Brienne of Tarth, in borrowed armor, whose enamel had been buffed a dozen times by squires eager to please. But it was still chipped at the flanges, the color bleeding dull where real battle had scored it. She rocked subtly on the balls of her feet, letting the slow clatter of distant tents and the crackle of torches wash across her nerve. Each ember on the braziers outside hissed a warning that only she seemed willing to hear. The hour was between dog and wolf, too late for revel, too early for duties. Around her, the camp of King Renly Baratheon. Renly the Radiant, Renly the Beloved, slept in irregular pockets, a kaleidoscope of banners resting in the hush before dawn. Gold roses of Highgarden drooped on humid air, beside the sunburst of the Fossaways and the trefoil of House Rowan. Closer, the colors of the Rainbow Guard gathered on thin silks strung between pikes. Red for Sir Bryce Caron, orange for Sir Robar Royce, yellow for Sir Parman Crane, green for Sir Emmon Quai, blue for Brienne herself, indigo for Sir Gaillard Morrigan, violet for Sir Loras Tyrell. 7 hues for 7 sworn swords, chosen to guard a king who believed pageantry could soothe suspicion like honey on a whetstone. In the stillness, Brienne's mind wandered to Tarth's shorelines, to the sea spray singing salt over fortress granite. A child's memory of gulls crying above Evenstar Hall lifted and fell inside her chest, but she pinned it down with silent breath exercises, drilled into her by Sir Goodwin, her old master-at-arms. She could not afford distraction. Not tonight, of all nights, when dread lay in every corner of the command tent, no matter how brightly candles were applied. Within, King Renly spoke in a half-whisper to Lady Catelyn Stark, who had arrived as envoy of her son, the king in the north. Their colloquy lingered over alliances, over oaths sworn and unsworn, yet their words reached Brienne only as diffused murmur. Soft, urbane, self-assured. Renly's tone carried an effortless confidence, the same lilt that once made men in Old Town swear he could talk birds from trees. Brienne admired that confidence, or used to. Now it frightened her, because things too flawless fracture when struck. The leather flap rustled. Sir Loras stepped out first, pale against the torch behind him, a trace of sweat at his brow though the night was cool. His violet eyes grazed across Brienne, and found no interest. He was looking for Stannis's shadows in the dark, not the blue shield standing sentinel. Loras's left hand stayed near the jeweled pommel of his longsword, one of those Tyrell blades whose scabbards bore gilded thorns. A heartbeat later, King Renly emerged. He had not donned his crown for parley, only a circlet of black walnut leaves, but in torch glow, it might as well have been solid gold. His beard was trimmed, his doublet sewn with 15 miniature golden stags chasing each other around silk. He looked fresh as morning wine, utterly untouched by fear. "Sir Brienne," Renly greeted in that gentle baritone. "I am for my bed at last. Lady Catelyn returns to her chambers. See, she is granted safe passage." Brienne bowed her head. "As you command, your grace." Catelyn Stark's gray eyes lingered on Brienne as if measuring the height of some invisible wall between servant and sovereign. She dipped a nod. Strands of auburn hair slipped from beneath her hood. "A pleasure to meet you, Sir Brienne. I have heard you distinguished yourself at Bitterbridge." Brienne's cheeks burned. Praise from such a composed noblewoman pressed harder upon her than any mace. "I did only what honor required, my lady." Renly's laugh was warm brandy. "Modesty does not suit this one, Lady Catelyn. She felled Sir Loras Tyrell himself, though I suspect the Knight of Flowers let her, smitten as he always is by a noble cause." Loras's mouth tightened. Whether from embarrassment, jealousy, or fatigue, Brienne could not tell. Torchlight inside the crimson hallway beyond fluttered. The gust carried with it a scent of warmed iron, faint yet insinuating. Brienne's nape prickled. She glanced toward the emptiness behind Renly, a gap between lamppost and pavilion post that looked too deep, too black. The flaps were parted just enough for night to creep inside. "Your Grace," she said, "will you permit me to remain on guard inside?" Renly lifted an eyebrow. Inside my own pavilion? You worry mice will gnaw the silk? He smiled to reassure. I have the Rainbow Guard to watch the perimeters. Sleep easy, Sir Brienne. Though, and then... She opened her mouth to insist, but Loras cut in. If Stark's messenger has nothing more, we should let his grace rest. Lady Catelyn accepted a lantern from a Tyrell's sworn sword. She departed with only one glance backward, faint lines of doubt gathering at her forehead, before she disappeared into the labyrinth of tents. Renly started to follow, meaning to duck beneath the velvet of his bedby pavilion. Brienne planted her gauntlet on the pole. Sire. The single word snapped hard as a bowstring. He halted, not angered, merely surprised. Yes. Allow me to stand watch at your bedside tonight. She did not know how to cloak fear in courtly phrasing, so she offered it raw. I feel ill at ease. You hear ghosts? His smile softened. Very well, you may. But if you must stare at me until dawn, at least close your eyes every third blink. It is wearying to be admired so relentlessly. She flushed again and stepped aside for him to pass into the interior chamber. The scent of sandalwood and myrrh wafted, masking whatever iron tinge she'd tasted. 2 stewards followed, untying the laces of his cloak and preparing the royal bed. Loras pushed past Brienne after them. She stayed outside the satin panels, forming the second skin of the pavilion, letting the breeze cool her face. It carried distant thunder out over the Blackwater rush. A promise of storm. 3 hours crawled by. Loras eventually emerged, fatigue having kneaded the sharp edges from his beauty. He favored Brienne with an obligatory nod, then made for his own tent across the central aisle. The stewards filed out next. When the last had gone, Brienne faced the inner curtain. Within, Renly's breathing rose and fell as slow as a resting hound. Candeleglo shivered on silk screens, painting flickers of stag antlers that seemed to grow, recede, grow again with each gutter. Brienne leaned on her sword. Every muscle in her stood taut, expecting something she could not name. A single flame snuffed itself beside Renly's headboard. No draft had touched it. The wick lay stark, a bead of wax cooling. She stepped closer. Another candle died, consumed by invisible mouth. Renly slept still. Her ear heard a hush too deliberate, the kind of silence left behind after wordless command. The tent fabric grew inwards by inches, as if something pressed against it from outside. Yet the flap did not lift, no blade sliced, no arrow pierced. Instead, the fabric bulged like dampened lungs expanding, and a shadow, long, thin, boneless, bulled through the weave itself. It slipped into being without aperture, its edges quivering like ink in water. Brienne's sword rasped free in a ring that might have woken every soldier within 10 yards. Renly stirred but did not rouse. The shadow advanced, flowing over pelts, over carpets, until it towered above the sleeping king, raising what appeared to be a sick-through arm made of starless midnight. Steel met candlelight. She lunged, slashing in a downward arc through something that had no flesh to sever. She felt impact anyway, like slicing frigid gelatin. The shadow reared, recoalescing around the strike, then whirled. Where its face should have been, there was only absence. But she tasted salt and onion on the air, and shorelines she had never walked seemed to echo in her mind. She drove again. Renly. He jerked upright, hair tousled, eyes wide. The shadow extended a claw, and Brienne hurled herself sideways, shoulder cracking against the bedpost. The blow struck tapestry instead, cleaving an opening as fabric rotted to black threads. Renly rolled, falling off the far side, confused but alive. Squires crashed through the door flap, summoned by noise. They saw only Brienne hacking at nothing, screaming for firelight, as candle after candle winked out around her. One threw a torch in panic. Its embers hit the shadow and scattered like sparks on cold stone. The shape convulsed, retreating toward the canvas wall, melting through it as though cloth were mist. Then, it was gone. Brienne's pulse rampaged. She peered, sword raised, at the slit in the side of the tent where dawn's first thin starlight glimmered. Outside, the guard shouted confusion. Renly, barefoot, wearing only a linen nightshirt now soaked with sweat, stood on trembling legs. He looked from Brienne to the torn pavilion, to the half-burned torch sizzling where it had rolled onto velvet rugs. "Gods," he breathed. "What in seven hells?" She stared at him, not daring to blink lest he dissolves as the shadow had. He moved to her, grasped her forearm. "Sir, you saved me." His voice cracked, wonder outstripping royal composure. Men poured in. Ser Emin, Ser Parman, Ser Guillard, each demanding answers. Brienne lowered her sword only after she saw Loras at the entry, half-dressed, blade in hand. His horror, upon discovering Renly alive, instead of dead, wrote itself plainly across his handsome face. Renly's eyes lifted above the crowd to his favorite knight. "Loras. Fetch Lord Mathis Rowan, Ser Robar, whoever stands closest this hour. Double the perimeter. No one enters or leaves without writ from me. Bonne." Loras's color returned like dawn creeping over frost. A reverent grin touched his mouth. He wheeled and sprinted into the night. Renly turned next to Brienne, then to Caitlin, who appeared moments later still in her traveling cloak, drawn by the ruckus. He pulled a cloak from a squire and slung it across Brienne's shoulders. "Ser Brienne of Tarth," he said, voice carrying beyond velvet to all present. "By my hand, and by every law of fealty old and new, I name you Lady Commander of the Rainbow Guard. Your loyalty has preserved your king, and with him perhaps the realm." Brienne felt heat flood through her veins, though she did not yet understand. Some part of her wished to kneel, but Renly tugged her upright, shaking his head. "Stand tall. Let every man who draws breath this night remember whose sword held the darkness at bay." Reports of the attack spread faster than trumpet call. By sunrise, servants whispered that Stannis had conjured a demon to slay his younger brother. Whether rumor or truth, it stitched unity into the colorful patchwork of Renly's host. Fear could have scattered them. Instead, fury forged them. The sun climbed leaden. Thunderclouds massed southward over Shipbreaker Bay, although no rain fell. Renly convened his lords inside the tourney grounds where knights practiced tilts, their lances muffled. Lady Margaery Tyrell, wed to Renly by Septon's vow only a fortnight earlier, sat at the king's left, her gaze steel-wrapped in smiling silk. Across the table, Lady Caitlin Stark, persistent as winter, repeating her plea for northern independence, even while acknowledging the miracle of Renly's survival. Brienne stood behind the king's chair beside Sir Bryce, scanning faces for signs of treachery. Every heartbeat she replayed the Shadow's assault, searching the memory for weakness. It had seemed intangible yet recoiled from steel and flame. Could it bleed? Would it return? Renly spoke. "Sir Courtney Penrose still holds Storm's End for Stannis. He will not yield to letters or to siege. If Stannis truly forges darkness, we must strike before his devilry gathers again." "Now, darling." Lord Randyll Tarly tapped knuckles on the map. Dot. "March at once, your grace. With Tyrell cavalry on the right and Rowan levies on the left, we can surround Storm's End in 3 days. Take the castle," Lord Mathis Rowan grumbled. "And we starve the loyalists in King's Landing from both coasts. Queen Cersei's boy won't last a fortnight." Margaery's smile was demure. Her fingers traced invisible patterns on the tablecloth. Brienne noted she never looked at Loras, though her brother hovered close, radiant. Lady Caitlin placed her own hand upon the map, steady, cool. "Rob Stark wishes peace, not further rivers of blood. Claim the Iron Throne if you must, but grant the North its freedom. 2 kings may live more easily than 5. The king clasped her wrist, a gesture intimate yet respectful between sovereigns. "I will discuss terms with your son once I sit the throne," he said. "Not before. If I bargain on the march, my banners will doubt." Thunder boomed, though sunlight still reigned. Brienne tasted metal on her tongue again. Plans unfolded, not a headlong dash to King's Landing, but a measured hammer hand in Ville. Renly's foot marched north along the Roserad, while a mounted vanguard, led by Loras and Randyll Tarly, would sweep inland, cutting supply lines. Brienne, newly commander, directed the Rainbow Guard to remain at Renly's side. She also posted 2 of her own recruits, Paxter Redwine's twins, both fine riders, inside Renly's personal lodge day and night. Yet sleep evaded her. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw that impossible arm rising above the king's sternum. She thought of the onion smell and wondered. Had it belonged to Davos Seaworth, rumored smuggler turned knight, sworn to Stannis? What sort of power pulled scent from man into phantom? On the second night after the attack, Renly summoned Brienne to his pavilion again, not in secret, but before the assembled lords. He handed her a sealed vellum scroll. "A royal command," he said. "No fewer than 500 knights ride under you at first light. You will parley with Sir Courtney Penrose. Show him my seal, and the might of my host camped only hours behind. Offer him pardon, should he yield Storm's End. If he refuses, you will provide safe escort for Lady Shira Errol and her children past the lines. She is innocent of Penrose's obstinacy." "Monsieur," Brienne stared. "Your Grace, I am no envoy." "You are better than envoy." He laid a hand on her pauldron. "You are my witness against the dark. The men call you Oathkeeper already. They trust you." Loras smirked at that, but it was not cruel. Rather, he admired. The Tyrell knight could respect valor, as well as beauty. So at dawn she rode, a column of armored knights behind, rainbow banners, entwined with golden roses, waving overhead. The breeze off the sea tasted of salt and thunder, and gulls shrieked warnings too distant to parse. Storm's End rose from cliffs like a giant's fist, squat and determined, battering rams below, never once having split its gated stones. Above its gate, Sir Courtney Penrose stood in gear of steel washed gray by salt. Beside him, a crimson banner bearing a fiery heart circled by stag antlers snapped at the wind. Stannis' new sigil, the rumor said, given by a red priestess from distant Ashai. "We come under banner of truce," Brienne called. Penrose studied her. "I recognize Lady Brienne of Tarth. Your father's manor is known. Speak." She held out Renly's scroll. "In the name of King Renly Baratheon, the first of his name, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm, you are summoned to yield this castle in peace. Your garrison will be pardoned. Supplies will be shared. No harm will fall on your house or your small folk." "Betty," Penrose laughed, a rasping gurgle more than mirth. "A curious summons from the brother who sent shadows to kill him. Tell Renly I saw the sky that night. No thunder yet lightning flashed across my window purple as bruises. I smelled foul sorcery, and come dawn I hear a rumor of his survival. I think not that Stannis' demon failed. I think Renly staged a phantom to steal hearts guarded by fools." Brienne bristled but kept voice even. "Phantom cut his tent and nearly slew him. I felt it was steel. Do not mistake survival for deceit." "Monsieur." Penrose lifted chin. "Perhaps. But a king who needs shadows fights with craven weapons. Stannis fights in the light." Her jaw clenched. "Then prove your lord's light. Yield and spare thousands." "Never." Penrose's eyes burned with conviction beyond reason. "Storm's End withstood Aegon the dragon. It will withstand 6 colors of silk." She tried once more, speaking of children, of hunger, but he would yield no inch. Finally she demanded Lady Shira and her girls. That he allowed. At dusk, the portcullis rose just enough for a covered car to exit. Under escort, Brienne guided it down the switchback as the horizon bruised violet. When she halted to rest the horses, Lady Shira's youngest asked, "Is King Renly kind?" Brienne considered. "He wishes to be loved." "Wishes," the child echoed, frowning. Back among Renly's vanguard 3 days later, Brienne reported Penrose's refusal. Renly paced, drumming fingers on his scabbard. "If words fail, we lay siege." Lord Tarley urged assault. Loras urged swift strike likewise, though his eyes kept straying to Brienne, perhaps measuring whether she might yet outshine him again. Catelyn Stark, still riding with the army under her guest right, grew restless at delay. She begged audience nightly, reminding Renly that Robb marched farther east every day. The realm risked fracturing beyond repair. Yet Renly deferred, and thunderclouds massed above the encampment each afternoon, only to dissolve by dawn, as if some god teased them. On the 4th such evening, Brienne stood atop an earthen rampart thrown around the siege lines, watching sunset glaze the sea red. Below, cooks prepared stews, grooms curried horses, armorers hammered rivets. The camp's noises wove a lullaby of order. She sensed him before hearing boots. Renly. He came alone. No crown. Just a plain sable cloak clasped by a jade stag's head. "Sir," he greeted quietly. She pivoted, saluted. "Do you trust in destiny, Brienne?" He leaned on the rampart, gazing toward Storm's End. Gulls wheeled like shreds of parchment over turrets. "I believe a man makes his own." He chuckled. "Just as well. I have dreamt these nights of a city on fire. Not King's Landing. Somewhere older. Pillars of black stone climb out of flame. In the dream, a shadow offers me a crown made of weeping tree." And a dream. A shadow offers me a crown made of weeping tree sap. When I refuse, it scatters into rose petals, and the wind rips petals across the sea. Brienne said nothing. Dreams were seldom safe ground amid war. Renly's profile caught the last seam of sun. "I once imagined ruling would be pageants and judgments, tournaments and tours. Yet here I stand before a fortress my brother may doom with unnatural craft. My banners brim with faith in my name. But each day I feel that faith weighs more than my sword." She wanted to say, "You can lay it down," but kings rarely could. Instead she offered, "Let them carry it with you. The host follows because it believes you see them, not merely need them." He studied her, eyes more hazel than green tonight. A soft smile touched them. "You've a soldier's blunt tongue, and a poet's heart. I hear it in how you speak of duty." Her cheeks warmed. In torch glow, she imagined they looked brick red. Renly straightened. "Tomorrow we begin siege works. Tarly will dig trenches to cut off the well. The Tyrell sappers will undermine the Barbican." "And the rainbow banners?" she asked. "You will remain at my side while I parley once more. If Stannis truly sends darkness, I'll face it in daylight with every color shining." Morning broke with tar-black clouds at last disgorging rain. Ziga towers, half-built, turned to slick skeletons. Mud sucked at boots. Yet Renly rode the lines in emerald cloak and polished breastplate, calling encouragement, promising plunder. His fervor infected even the most sodden footmen. Brienne trailed a step behind, her cobalt shield reflecting flashes of lightning overhead. Each rumble jarred her ribs. She carried lanterns of whale oil strapped to her saddlebags in case night came before they returned. Steel and flame together had driven the shadow back. She would not be without either. At midday, sea crews sighted sails. 30 banners of House Estermont and 20 of Florent, beating against the wind toward Shipbreaker Bay. Stannis reinforcements. The news flew along the trenches, stirring worry. Renly halted his horse, rain coursing down his helm. "So my brother dares the tide." Before he could speak further, thunder cracked. Brienne looked up, and for an instant the clouds parted, revealing a disk of sun ringed by darkness like an eclipse. Though the moon was not due to blot that day. Daylight dimmed unnatural. Her heart stuttered. She reached for her sword. Renly whipped around, meeting her gaze. He saw her fear and trusted it in a blink. Back to camp, he barked to riders. Trumpets blasted. The host pivoted as one. They galloped across churned fields. Tents ahead looked half-lit by strange dusk, though it was mid-afternoon. Wind moaned through guy ropes, lifting canvas like sails. Loras met them at the command pavilion, rain matting his curls, eyes huge. "I felt it again," he said without preamble. "Fresh as the night you nearly." Renly dismounted. "Assemble the guard, all of them. And fetch the Red Woman Melisandre if the rumors hold she is with Stannis' fleet. Though I doubt she'll come." Brienne stripped off her wet gauntlets, flexing fingers. She sensed the weight of sky pressing lower. Somewhere horses screamed. She scanned for unnatural movement in every shadow. The first arrow of frost burst across her shoulders, not cold, but rather a memory of cold, as though winter long past brushed her spine. She pivoted, sword high. Nothing there but tense rippling. Yet she smelled onions again. "Light," she muttered, and slapped a flint to lantern wick. It flared bright blue-white, spitting in the rain. The air thickened. Men stumbled, shouting. A mist more darkness than water oozed between stakes of a nearby palisade, coalescing into long limbs. Brienne leapt forward, lantern raised, blade cocked back. But this time she was not alone. The Rainbow Guard surged. Sir Emmon with mace, Sir Parman with halberd, Sir Bryce with double-bladed axe. They formed a half-circle before the fleeting silhouette that towered like a man but had no face. Torchbearers fanned out. Lightning forked above. In that strobe of brilliance, the shadow's edges glimmered beetle-shell green, as if the storm itself, jealous of the sun it had smothered, now tried to birth a creature from its own belly. Renly strode into the ring. "I am king of the 7 kingdoms," he declared, voice carrying above rainpelt. "If you mean to slay me, show yourself holy. Do not hide behind mirage." Then, the shadow's chest shivered. A slit of nothing widened where a mouth might be. A voice poured forth, deep, distant, like stone grinding stone. "Only one king, only light and shadow. Kneel." Brienne advanced. A lantern flame licked at the thing's surface. Smoke curled off it with hiss of boiling tar. The shape recoiled. Her sword flashed, cutting again. This time Loras thrust simultaneously with Renly's sword, steel meeting intangible, yet each impact shaved wisps off the figure. Sir Emmon raised his mace in 2 hands. For Rainbow Guard. He brought it down. The shadow fractured, dissolving into ribbons, sucked sideways on a gust that vanished as soon as it came. Rain eased. Sunlight returned in a drip, as though someone lifted a veil from the firmament. Men blinked at ordinary daylight. The only sign of the monster was a circle of tents, whose fabric now aged 50 years, colors leached, threads hanging. Renly exhaled slow. "It fears flame," Brienne said. "And steel wielded without fear," he replied. The lords who witnessed grew bold. Rumors blooming that Renly himself commanded sorcery to stave off sorcery. Others whispered the 7 had chosen him. Either faith served. The host stiffened its resolve. That night, fires burned bright as midday, every second sentry holding lantern or torch. At a war council after the storm, Renly proclaimed a new course. They would not wait out siege. They would break Storm's End by morning assault, before Stannis' fleet could combine with castle defenders. The Rainbow Host would lead the van, colors streaming under first light, to show every garrison eye that the king lived, and his courage burned hotter than any shadow. Brienne listened, tense. Assaulting a fortress that resisted dragons was foolhardy. But her king seemed possessed of a destiny now doubly tested by darkness. If he faltered, morale would shatter. If he triumphed, it would set a legend no black magic could unwrite. She found him alone afterward, sitting on a crate beneath a canopy of patched canvas. Rain still trickled through holes, dotting his gauntlets. Candlelight guttered. He stared at his own cupped hands as though reading omens there. "Your Grace," she began. He lifted eyes, weary. "Sir, I do not fear for myself," she said. "But I fear what else your brother may send." Renly gestured toward the flickering flame between them. "Then keep the flame lit. Keep your sword keen." He offered a smile, small but sincere. "And tell me what songs Stormlanders sing of brave maids who guard their lords. There may be need for ballad tomorrow." She did not know many songs. None flattered maidens large of limb. Yet she recited one anyway. "Winter Rose," about a girl who kept vigil for a lover lost to snow. As she spoke, Renly's shoulders loosened, and when the verse ended he breathed a little easier. Brienne realized then that fear was not his burden alone. It was a mantle all beneath the king must wear so he might stride unbowed. She would wear it gladly, if it steadied him. Dawn birthed a bruised sky. Trumpets blasted. Ziga towers rolled under creaking weight towards curtain walls, while crossbowmen furnished cover. On the forward line, a Rainbow Host fanned across muddy flat. Shields held high, a living prism splitting the half-light into defiant hues. Brienne rode at the center beneath banner blue. Her sword gleamed, newly honed, reflecting pale sun like a shard of river. Arrows fell from battlements. Some struck shields, others thudded into sod. Men screamed, and color darkened beneath drying blood. Yet the host advanced. Renly himself did not remain behind lines. He rode at Brienne's right, stag helm wrought of gilded steel catching each shaft that rattled off. When a sally gate opened, and Penrose's men charged, Renly lowered his lance and couched it. Brienne matched him. Loras sprinted ahead, his violet cloak a whip of color. The collision jarred bone. Shadows fled under hooves, as solid bodies clashed in rain of mud and sweat. Brienne lost vision of Renly for heartbeats as horsemen tore around her. She cleaved through a Florent bannerman, pivoted to parry a mace. When she found the king again, he was dismounted but alive, back to a fallen statue fragment near the walls, sword a blur. She fought to him, shield bristling with quarrels. "Your grace, I yet live," he panted. Blood, not his, freckled his cheek. Then the portcullis groaned high above, chains jangling. Men atop gestured frantically. Brienne squinted through visor slits. Sir Courtenay Penrose himself stood at the lattice, waving a white streamer. Horns sounded cease. The clash bled into ragged silence. Renly shoved helm off, hair plastered. He padded forward, Brienne beside. Penrose shouted, "I yield, on condition." "Speak," Renly answered. Penrose's voice shook with something like grief. "Your brother's fleet sits the anchorage. If I deny them, he'll turn that sorcery upon us in full. Swear no vengeance on the small folk, and swear trial by combat against Stannis or his champion for the crown." Renly exchanged glance with Brienne. Lightning etched the horizon far seaward. She said low, "Accept. It grabs the realm's eye." He nodded. Louder, "I so swear. You and your garrison may join me or depart unharmed." Cheers rippled across battered fields. The portcullis rose. Knights on both sides lowered weapons. As Renly passed beneath Storm's End stone arch, an arch denied to Baratheons long dead beneath Robert's rebellion, drums began to beat. Not war drums, but parade rhythm, set by Tyrell musicians rallying near the siege camps. Colored banners unfurled, sagging from moisture but bright as sunrise. On battlements, defenders watched as foe turned hosts, awe mixing with uncertainty. Renly climbed the steps to the parapet and looked out upon his host. Upon Siege's End, as they already named this hour below. Wind picked up, plucking at his cloak like 1,000 unseen fingers urging him forward. He raised his sword. "My friends," his voice carried, shaped by raw victory and near death twice cheated. "Storm's End stands with the Rainbow Host." An answering roar shook the very rocks. Brienne felt it travel through the soles of her boots into marrow. She understood then that legend was not lightning. It was steady rain, drop after drop until stone surrendered. The shadow had failed. The fortress had capitulated. Ahead lay King's Landing, where lions ruled on fragile boys' authority, and where common folk whispered for a king of color. Yet in the west a sea storm boiled, no longer restrained. Ships bearing the fiery heart of a foreign god pressed on tide toward the fortress they no longer owned. And with them rode the Red Woman, the Onion Knight, and powers still unseen. Renly's sheathed sword turned to Brienne. In his eyes burnt gratitude and resolve, fused into one bright coal. "Lady Commander," he said, "keep your guard close. Tonight we crown victory. Tomorrow we ride for the Iron Throne." "Then Tormentwand." Brienne bowed her head. Around her, gates opened wider, admitting cheers, admitting song. Yet night's edge loomed like a cloak of pin feathers. She fingered steel and flint at her belt. She would keep light alive. For king, for realm, for all the colors promised at the far end of war's storm. Undirawan. Hema. Crows wheeled across the mid-afternoon sky above Storm's End, while tents still flattened by the morning assault were being re-erected in winds that smelled of brine and victory. The once green field outside the curtain wall had churned into a patchwork of crimson and ochre mud, yet triumph lent every troop a feather-light step despite the exhaustion of battle. Brienne supervised the Rainbow Guard in establishing a triple-ringed perimeter within the ancient fortress walls. She stationed Sir Emmon at the postern overlooking the sea, Sir Parman atop the drum tower commanding the main gate, while Sir Guillard paced the barbican's arrow slits like a lantern on an anxious tide. Renly occupied the Lord Solar as if born to it, but rather than repose in the plush chair behind its oak desk, he stood barefoot upon the rush-strewn floor, his cloak dark with sweat at the collar. Maester Meadows, seconded from Highgarden, knelt by a brazier trying to dry damp bandages for the wounded. Between them crouched a boy of 8 named de Gawain Estermont, who had crept through the melee to reach Storm's End with a plea from his mother. Sir Eldon's galleass lay stranded on a shoal north of Shipbreaker Bay after a sudden wind shift. Brienne arrived to find Renly bending to the lad's level, promising a contingent of rowboats and a Tyrol surgeon. The sincerity in the king's voice carried the weight of law. Gawain's shoulders straightened like a sapling pulled to sun. When the boy had been guided away by a steward, Renly caught Brienne's eye. The smile he offered was genuine, though fatigue shadowed its edges. "Lady Commander," he said as she saluted, "tell me the walls of Storm's End are as stout as legend claims." "They were stout enough to deny dragons," she replied. "They will deny Stannis." Renly's fingers drummed on the hilt of his sheathed sword. "I would like nothing better than to believe legend. But dragons are flame and terror. Shadows strike from within. I remember Robert's songs of this keep. Holding a fortress is simpler than keeping a heart whole." Brienne weighed the import of shadow and heart alike. "Shadows fear light, your grace. We have fires enough to burn half the reach. Yet my brother will bring more than shadow," Renly muttered, turning to the window. Outside the narrow arch, the sea kaleidoscoped gray and silver, and beyond its horizon sat a fleet carrying Wildfire Rumor, the Red Priestess Melisandre, and a faith alien to Westeros. "Twice now you have watched over me," he continued softly. "Tomorrow at dawn we march north. I will not shirk that destiny, but tonight, let us make this castle shine brighter than any omen of doom." He placed a hand on her pauldron, the gesture both monarchs' command and brotherly reliance. Brienne felt a heat beneath the iron that had nothing to do with brazier flame. The castle's ancient granite courtyards blossomed with color, as dusk kindled torches and sconces and braziers along ramparts. Musicians from Highgarden unpacked shawms, lutes, and a slender Valyrian glass harp rarely heard outside the reach. Squires hastily scrubbed blood from flagstones, spreading carpets and long oak tables borrowed from the Great Hall. The cooks roasted meats on spits, scenting the night with thyme, rosemary, and the sweeter smoke of applewood. Brienne oversaw arrangements with a tactician's eye, measuring vantage points and shadows. She insisted on braziers in every corner, and double torches by any alcove deep enough to hide a man with knife or demon with darker intent. No servant balked at her orders. Rumor of her duel with the shadow had grown. Some whispered she bore the blessing of the warrior. Others swore she was half-giant like Hodor of Winterfell. She minded neither. Let myth guard what steel could not. The king's table dominated the eastern end of the yard, below a banner newly stitched that bore a crowned stag springing across a field banded in the full spectrum of the Rainbow Guard. Beside Renly's seat, Lady Marguerite arranged her gown so emerald silk sloped over the dais like forest moss. Her smile was serene, yet her eyes never ceased noting troop dispositions and supply wagons. Brienne suspected the young queen gleaned more from war than court expected. When the feast began, Brienne accepted a lesser bench between Sir Emmon and Sir Bryce. Honeyed wine swirled in goblets. The first course of goat cheese and pomegranate preceded roasted herons glazed in lemon. Bards sang of Garth Greenhand and the founding of the Reach. Low garden jesters capered in motley, one wearing a crude antlered helm of wicker, prompting peals of laughter even from dour Lord Randall Tarley. But all gaiety shattered when a horn blast echoed from the outer gate. Its timbre was not their own. Brienne stood, hand on sword, as silence cracked through the yard like a falling tree. Renly rose slower, nodding at Loras, who melted into the shadows behind the dais. A second horn, thin and eerie, drifted on sea wind. It carried no note of challenge typical of Stormlander horns. This call groaned longer, as though someone forced air through bone rather than brass. Renly spoke, voice calm but steely. "Double the wall watch. Send riders to the cliff path, bring word." Sir Emmon sprinted off, rainbow cloak streaming. The bards faltered into hush. Brienne's gaze darted between torches, seeking any unnatural flutter. Moonlight glinted on armory racks lined along the courtyard periphery, steel whispering a promise of defense. Time seemed to stretch until hoofbeats rang on cobbles. A courier clad in Night's Watch black rode past banners sliding from saddle. His coat was torn, soaked to the waist. One might think him drowned. He knelt at Renly's dais. "My king," he gasped. "I ride under truce from Sir Davos Seaworth. Lord Stannis summons you at dawn beneath the spire of Weeping Town. He proposes trial by combat, champion to champion." Murmurs surged like rats scattering. Renly stared down, expression unreadable. "Trial by combat," he echoed. "Lord Stannis claims the Red God demands justice," the courier added. "One king shall be chosen in fire and blood, should you decline the duel." The threat rang louder than drums. Brienne sensed the tension spool across the courtyard, until every torch guttered in a single simultaneous shiver. Margaery leaned toward her husband. Renly waved her still. He turned to Brienne. "Who will stand for me?" Before she could voice a reply, Randyll Tarly thumped his fist on the table. "I shall, your grace." Sir Randyll has never been bested and wields Heartsbane, ancient as Old Town. Sir Loras stepped forward from the shadows. Rain-damp curls framed a face bright with devotion and rivalry. "Your grace, you know none ride nor wield blade as swiftly as I. I will fight and bring you glory." Then smile. Brienne felt heat climb her cheeks. Her hand tightened on the pommel. She had sworn to protect, not claim accolades. Yet, if Shadow had shape of a champion, she feared none but herself would stand unmoved. Renly's gaze swept from Tarly to Loras, then Brienne. In his hazel eyes flickered the memory of two nights' terror. "Champions decide fate," he murmured. "But a king must choose more than winning arm. He must choose symbol." He set a gentle hand atop Brienne's gauntlet. "Lady Commander, will you bear my shield at dawn?" A hush swallowed the yard. Even Sir Loras, eyes narrowed a heartbeat, bowed his head. Brienne swallowed. "Your grace, I will face any foe for you." Renly nodded once, decisive. "Then so be it. The duel shall be at dawn. Sir Davos will arrange the field. Spread word, light every brazier, stoke every hearth. The darkness shall find no foothold in Storm's End tonight." The feast dispersed into brisk activity. Torches were replaced twice as fast as they burned. Archers patrolled parapets with flaming arrows, knocked. The courtyard became a dance of light and ready steel. Fear transmuted into vigilance. Pre-dawn's canvas was inked with violet seams when Brienne knelt in the private chapel, carved into Storm's End's heart. A cavernous space where ancient lords once prayed to the storm god. She asked no gods for favor, only clarity. When she rose, she found Loras in the nave. Candle trembling between his fingers. "We shall both guard him after," he said without preamble. Voice rawed. "It should have been me." Brienne exhaled. Renly chose symbol. "I cannot wield a tournament lance as you. But I am immovable." A sigh. "You are." Loras lowered the candle, letting wax spill across gloved knuckles. "If you fall, I finish it." She nodded. There was no rivalry now, only bracing steel. Mist rolled over Weeping Town's meadow by dawn. Dew clung to battered grass, where long dormant graves mounded like silent witnesses. At the center of a natural bowl stood a circle of torches hammered into earth. Renly, cloaked in rainbow-banded green, waited on the western edge with Loras, Randyll Tarly, and Margaery behind. Brienne, visor raised, advanced alone toward the ring. From the east emerged a shadowed party. Stannis Baratheon strode ahead, clean-shaven, face drawn by sleeplessness. He wore dark mail under a black surcoat, emblazoned with the fiery heart and stag. The new sigil he bore like chain. Beside him walked a woman in scarlet robes so deep they swallowed color. "Melisandre." Her eyes smoldered, reflecting torchlight, though her face lay half in gloom. Behind them limped Davos Seaworth, cloak sodden, bearing a simple lantern. Standard bearers planted banners at opposite ends of the circle. Neither brother looked at the other banners. They stared into one another's pupils as if warring already. A maester stepped forward, old Pylos from Dragonstone by the chains at throat. He read the articles of single combat. No magic, no second, arms agreed upon. Victory by death, yield, or incapacity. The realm to honor the outcome. Renly gestured to Brienne. She unslung her shield, a polished kite emblazoned with a crowned stag circled by 7 bands of paint. She drew her longsword, light-hued from a new oiling. She let the blade rest across her gauntleted palms and spoke to the field. I am Brienne of Tarth, sworn to King Renly Baratheon, who stands for Stannis. A hush. Melisandre began to step forward, but Stannis lifted a gloved hand. Sir Garland Tyrell, he said. Gasps ran through both camps. From Stannis' retinue stepped a figure armored head to toe in bronze steel chased with red. He removed his helm, revealing Garland Tyrell indeed, elder brother to Loras. Eyes calm, hair damp with salt sweat. He bowed to Stannis. Renly's shock washed away into anger. The Tyrells are pledged to me. Garland spoke, voice steady. My loyalty is to the realm, your grace. Lord Stannis is rightful king by birth. Wow! Margaery cried out. Loras half drew his blade before Tarly seized his arm. Renly breathed once through teeth. Then you dishonor your house. Honor stands what justice does, Garland replied. Brienne watched Melisandre. The Red Woman's gaze rested upon her, not the duelists. She felt a subtle tug at her lungs, as if breath tried to flee. She looked away, letting hatred for cowardly sorcery anchor her. Weapons were presented. Equal longswords, round shields, neither enchanted nor poisoned. Both combatants inspected the other for hidden arms. None were found. They bowed toward each brother king, then toward each other. The maester dropped a linen kerchief. Brienne and Garland circled. Dew-slicked leather boots, torches sputtered. Their swords met with a clang that wrenched Brienne's elbows. Garland pressed, footwork elegant, blade dart quick. Brienne relied on reach and power, parrying wide arcs meant to drive him off balance. 3 passes, neither gained. On the 4th, Garland feinted high and rolled under, nicking Brienne's thigh. The sting sharpened her focus. She retaliated with a shield thrust that rattled his breastplate, then pivoted into a backhand slash aimed across his helm. He ducked, scoring her hip in return. Every blow echoed between distant hills. Brienne's breath steamed. Garland's eyes gleamed in half-light. She sensed a shift. The air thickened, as though furnace heat rose beneath them. Melisandre lifted her hands, wordless. The torches around the ring flared brighter, tongues of orange twisting into shapes that resembled antlers. Brienne tasted copper, metallic and wrong. She shouted over her shoulder, "No sorcery!" The maester's voice quavered but did not intervene. In that distraction, Garland lunged, tip glancing her pauldron. She riposted, hammering his edge down, locking crossguards. Face to face, they grunted. Garland whispered, "Strike me down. 2 kings must not die." Puzzled, she shoved him free. He withdrew a pace, helm tilted. She pressed, raining 2-handed blows. He parried high, but she chopped low, hooking behind knee. Garland staggered, his shield dipped. Brienne knocked it aside, blade at his throat. Sweat stung her eyes. She saw despair in his. He lowered sword. "Yield," she growled. Before he could speak, flame burst in a circle around them, melting dew. Gasps rang from the crowd. Melisandre's robe rippled like live coal. Shadow shapes writhed inside the flame. Not human silhouettes, but great serpents that arced and hissed. Brienne backed, boots close to fire. Garland froze, mouth open dirty. Renly bellowed across the ring, voice cracking. "Enough!" He rushed forward, but invisible force blew him back as though by hurricane. Stannis too lurched, eyes ablaze confusion. Inside the ring, the flame grew. Brienne lifted shield expecting heat to sear through steel, yet her arm remained cool. The fire burned illusions, not flesh, but the air tasted of ash. A shriek erupted, not masculine nor feminine, but elemental. From the ring's center, something crawled up through flame. A shadow crowned with horns of smoke. It held a sword of obsidian night, point aimed at Brienne. Garland hurled himself before her, shield held high. The shadow cut the shield like paper. Garland cried out. Blood spurted. His arm fell limp. Brienne swung savagely, her blade slicing through the creature's torso, which parted yet recohered. She understood. No normal edge would fell this. She seized the torch nearest, thrusting flame at the shadow. It recoiled, edges sizzling. She pressed, brandishing both sword and fire, forcing it back. Behind, torchbearers ran to supply more flame. The shadow flickered, contracting into a single plume, and then breaking like wind-flung ash. The fire ring guttered out. Silence dropped heavy as an anvil. Garland collapsed, gripping shredded forearm. Brienne knelt, pressing linen to his wound. Renly and Stannis rushed the circle's edge, but Melisandre barred them with a rising hand. Davos stepped between kings, pleading. "Laud in embers," Melisandre intoned, voice low but carrying. "The Lord of Light has shown truth. One king's cause stands in flame, the other fades in shadow." Renly snarled. "Your shadow sought murder." Again, it failed. Melisandre smiled, eerie serene. "Shadows are cast by light. Reject the truth, and flame will only burn brighter." Stannis spoke, tone brittle. "Enough riddles. Sister, you swore the god's champion would triumph." "And, he has," she replied, eyes on Brienne. "For the one willing to embrace fire is chosen." Brienne's torch did what sword could not. The gathered lords murmured. Brienne felt heat rise in cheeks. Was she being claimed by this foreign faith? She stood, blood smeared across cuirass, and faced Renly. "Your Grace, the champion of Stannis lies wounded by shadow." "Victory is ours," she said. Yet Stannis turned to Melisandre. "If the god willed Brienne to stand, I must heed. Will you let me treat with my brother?" She inclined her head. Renly approached. Brienne slid to his side. Brothers who had traded claim to throne now stood a sword length apart. For a beat, neither spoke. Renly broke silence. "Trial ends. My champion stands unharmed. Your champion struck by your witchery." Stannis' jaw worked. "I did not command shadows." Renly laughed once, bitter. "You followed them, though." Brienne heard footfalls behind. Loras, Margaery, Tarly closed in. Garland groaned, supported by Davos. Maester Pylos scrambled with poultices. The moment trembled between bloodshed and ceasefire. Then thunder boomed from the sea. All eyes lifted. Sails upon sails crowded the horizon. Stannis' main fleet at last. But another host of masts cut athwart them, sails gold and crimson. The red wine fleet from the arbor, summoned by Lady Olenna to aid her granddaughter's king. Naval horns trumpeted. Renly's lips curved. "Seems your path is blocked." Stannis exhaled, shoulders slumping, as if each sail were a stone burden. He looked not at Renly, but at the fortress crowning the distant cliff. Robert's boyhood home. Regret flashed over grim features. "It need not end in brother's blood," Renly said, voice softer now. "Stand with me. We will sit the Iron Throne together. Hand in king, light and realm in balance." Melisandre stepped forward sharply, but Stannis raised a hand to silence her. His eyes searched Renly's, blue so like Robert's had been once. Waves lapped, gulls cried. "Two brothers ruled Westeros once," he murmured, "when Aegon's son split crown and field. It ended in dragons burned to ash. I cannot divide a realm already fraying." Renly's shoulders stiffened. "Then choose loyalty." Stannis. Loyalty to people before prophecy. Stannis' gaze shifted to Brienne, to Garland bleeding. "The people suffer while we squabble." He turned to Melisandre. "If your god seeks peace, let him guide us there." She frowned. "The night is dark and full of terrors." Only in flame is peace. Stannis' voice hardened. Enough. I have seen your fire slay children. I will see no more blood spilled by unseen knives. Melisandre's eyes flared. For a heartbeat, Brienne feared the shadows would rise anew. But instead the priestess bowed, scarlet hair falling forward. As you command. Stannis faced his brother again. I will swear sword to you, Renly, on condition. The boy on the Iron Throne must step aside. We will reform council equal. Tyrells, Baratheons, Starks, Arryns. The realm deserves more than lions devouring cubs. Renly's breath caught. Loras shifted, but Margaery rested a calming hand on his wrist. Randyll Tarly nodded approval. Brienne watched a kingdom pivot upon a yes or no. Renly's next words rode the hush like arrows aimed at destiny. Then let it be so. We ride together to King's Landing. We free the crown from Cersei's grip. He extended his hand. Stannis clasped it, rough palm meeting smooth. A susurrus rose. Relief. Hope. Intrigue. Melisandre regarded the handshake with unreadable eyes. Flames reflecting within seemed to gutter. The news spread. Baratheon brothers united, rainbow host reinforced by Stormlander veteran levies. Tyrell roses in full bloom beside stag banners. Ravens flew in 4 directions. In Harrenhal, Tywin Lannister crushed a cup upon reading. In River Run, Catelyn Stark allowed herself the first exhale since Ned's death. In Dragonstone, Shireen clapped at word her father might live through war. Within Storm's End, preparations blurred night into morning. Brienne oversaw integration of Stannis knights into her guard, though Loras objected at first. She insisted trust, forged under threat of shadow, outranked suspicion of a crest. Ser Davos joined council sessions, weathering skeptical stares with patient dignity. The united host sailed and marched simultaneously. Renly and Margaery led the larger foot column up the Rose Road, while Stannis helmed the fleet with Davos as master. Brienne, Loras, and the Rainbow Guard rode forward as advance scouts, ensuring every torch along the road burned dusk till dawn. No shadow would stalk unseen. They passed bitter towns ravaged by Lannister levies. In each Renly's spearmen distributed bread, Tyrell maesters offered medicine, and Stannis soldiers repaired wells. When rumor of this mercy reached King's Landing, the small folk there began defacing golden lions on doorposts, painting crude rainbows beside 7-pointed stars. Within a fortnight, they camped outside the city's south gate. Renly climbed a battering tower to address the throngs lining walls. He spoke of justice untainted by incest, of taxes spent on grain rather than alchemists' wildfire, of lords bound not by fear but color and code. His voice carried through the Blackwater, echoing like bells. Inside the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister clutched her son and demanded wildfire barrels readied. Tyrion, hand in all but name, argued for parley. But Qyburn whispered of new catapults capable of hurling green fire a full league. Some considered untested. The siege began. Yet hardly a bolt flew in first days. Fleets of the Reach blockaded harbors. Stannis galleys patrolled downstream. Ravens offered truce terms. Safety for small folk, trial for Cersei's crimes, wardship for Joffrey until his majority. Cersei scoffed. She trusted wildfire over mercy. Thus on the 10th dawn, barrels launched from Maegor's holdfast arced like emerald comets. Brienne, atop a siege mantlet, watched the first barrel stub out in mud, hissing but not blasting, its mixture damp. The second shattered against a dike, green flame erupting but confined by trenchworks. The third soared beyond lines, over the besiegers' camp, over wicker wagons, to explode high above the walls, scattering droplets of napalm across Cersei's own courtyard. Screams rose inside the city, gold cloak scrambled. The misfire shattered morale within. Small folk rioted at gatehouses. Lannister crossbows turned upon each other. On 12th night, Tyrion stole down to Brienne's lines under flag of truce. He brought parchment bearing Cersei's capitulation, sealed in crimson wax. She would surrender provided safe exile for Joffrey and Myrcella to Casterly Rock. The brothers convened in Renly's pavilion. Stannis insisted the boy, king face tribunal, but yielded to counsel. Renly argued mercy buys loyalty. Davos pointed out sending the lion cubs west would rally Lannisport behind rebellion. Margaery, quiet till then, suggested hostage exchange. Joffrey and Myrcella would dwell in Highgarden as wards 5 years, while hostages of Tyrell blood reside at Casterly Rock. The solution balanced swords and roses. Tyrion agreed. At dawn, Brienne led the Rainbow Guard through Lion Gate, rainbow banners rippling above ranks of reach spears. Streets previously choked with corpses, after food riots now filled with awestruck citizens. They knelt, or stared, watching a blue-armored giantess stride unflinching toward the Red Keep. Cersei emerged, flanked by Hound and Pycelle, golden hair windblown, eyes hollow. She handed Joffrey's crown to Renly, lips a thin line. Joffrey sputtered curses until Tyrion cuffed him silent. Myrcella wept quietly. Brienne noted, Cersei's gaze not on Renly but on Melisandre, who stood near Stannis now wearing a cloak of subdued red. Something like recognition and dread flashed between lioness and priestess. Transfer complete. Renly ascended the steps of the Iron Throne Hall. Brienne followed with Loras on flank. They crossed the shattered mosaic of dragons that Aerys' wildfire. Atop black iron twisted into swords of the conquered, Renly seated himself. He did not yet don the Baratheon crown. Instead he placed Gowyn Estremont's simple copper circlet upon his head, bowing to the gathered hall of lords and smallfolk. "I come not to rule in fear," he announced. "I come to bind colors in common light. Let each lord keep his honor. Let each faith worship unshackled. Let justice be forged anew." Messunau. Cheers rang, uncertain at first, then swelling like surf on Dragonstone cliffs. Stannis stood at his side, unreadable. Melisandre's lips parted as if to speak, but Brienne lifted her spear butt to the floor, steel echo reverberating. The Red Woman closed her mouth. That night, Stormland's thunderheads sprouted above King's Landing. Rain began, cleansing green fire scorch away. Brienne patrolled marble corridors outside the royal apartments, lantern held aloft. Sword within easy reach. Servants tiptoed, cowed by change. She passed tapestries of Aegon's conquest now half singed from previous fires. She wondered what future artisans would weave of this day, if they'd paint her sword alight with holy magic, or acknowledge the sweat fear and sleepless vigilance. At a corner window she paused. Below, the city's lanterns flickered like scattered jewels. Farther, the Blackwater Bay lay calm, dotted with riding lights of Stannis' fleet anchored at peace. Lightning flashed on horizon. She braced, fearing shadow, but it was just a storm. Footsteps approached. Renly stepped into view, cloak replaced by plain tunic. He rested forearms on stone balustrade next to her, looking upon the silent city. "All that pageantry," he said softly. Yet victory came down to one duel and a torch. "One woman's torch, perhaps," she answered. He smiled, tired but genuine. "You'll tell me you did only your duty." She shrugged. "Duty can make legends." He focused on lightning far off. "Tomorrow, we seat a new council. Stannis will be hand until realm steadies. Davos master of ships. Randyll Tarly master of laws. The small folk will not care for titles. They will remember bread in bellies. Da. And they will remember the shadow that failed," Brienne added. "Shadows always fail when faced with unbreakable shields and honest flame," Renly said. He turned, offering his hand. She hesitated, then removed gauntlet, placing her rough palm in his. "Yet even kings tire," he murmured. "Walk with me, Lady Brienne." She accompanied him through quiet hallways, torches throwing intertwined silhouettes along stone walls. He spoke of rebuilding the King's Road bridges burned in war, of a festival of colors each harvest moon, celebrating unity. He asked her thoughts on knighting small folk who proved valor, on forming a guard of both men and women. She answered cautiously. Amazed, he sought her counsel as equal. At the doors of his solar, he paused. "Did you ever dream on Tarth of such nights?" "I dreamed of honor," she said, "but never imagined it could change realms." He bowed head. "Honor lights the path. You lit mine." He released her hand, stepping inside. She resumed her patrol, heart strangely light despite armor's weight. Weeks blurred into policy and parade. Stannis proved stern but fair as hand. His signature tightened purse strings, yet freed grain reserves. Loras marshaled royal guards with renewed zeal, sparring often with Brienne, friendly rivalry forging respect. Margaery opened soup kitchens financed by Tyrell coffers. Small folk dubbed her Rose of Mercy. Melisandre founded a small shrine to the Lord of Light on Dragon Pit Hill, though some muttered superstition. The shrine's braziers kept nights bright, and no shadows prowled since. One evening, Brienne found Garland Tyrell recovering in Maegor's Holdfast Gardens, arm white bandaged, but healing. He presented her a sword newly forged in Highgarden, a hand-and-a-half blade, fuller etched with stag and spear lily. Its name, he said, was Dawnshield, for it had stood between Wild Flame and the realm's hope. She accepted, humbled. Peace, though tenuous, rippled outward. Edmure Tully rode south to swear fealty. Doran Martell dispatched emissaries to negotiate dowry for Myrcella's future match in Sunspear. Even Baelish returned from Vale with ships of grain purchased at discount. Though Brienne did not trust his smiles, Renly decreed a tourney to celebrate unity. Knights of every corner converged. The North's few foot knights under Lady Mage Mormont, Ironborn volunteers under newly crowned Queen Asha Greyjoy, Vale-winged lancers wearing Arryn Falcon. Amid such spectacle, Brienne neither tilted nor fought melee, per Renly's personal order. Her injuries from duel still ached. Instead, she served as marshal, calling matches, granting honors. During final joust, Loras faced Sandor Clegane. They broke 8 lances before Sandor yielded with grudging respect. At the dais, Renly placed laurel upon Loras's helm, their eyes lingering, and the crowd roared. Night of feast that followed, Brienne lingered at edge of dance floor. Lords twirled ladies in swirling color. Tyrell musicians playing a new composition named Light Over Weeping Meadow. She felt both at home and adrift. Renly approached, glass of arbor gold in hand. I sought you. He offered the goblet. She declined. He chuckled. Ever vigilant. But I request one dance. She froze, self-conscious of her height, her armor replaced by simple blue doublet. Your Grace, I do not dance. Then walk with me, he amended, extending elbow. She took it. They paced the terrace above river. Moon silvered battlements. Breeze carried lavender from Queen Margaery's gardens. Renly halted by parapet. Some would say kings should not take walks with guards, he mused. Some would be fools, she said. He laughed quietly. I wonder, Brienne of Tarth. Do you miss the island home you left? 8 times, she admitted. But duty is anchor. Anchor must not drown. He rested free hand atop hers on his arm. I will ask something of you after tourney ends. She waited. I wish you to lead a new order, he said softly. Not Rainbow Guard, but a knightly brotherhood of shields. Men and women sworn first to realms innocent. No banners. Only oaths. I would name you Grand Captain. Breath fled her chest. Sire, I am no. You are the realm's truest steel, he insisted. I whore counsels brimming with cunning. I need hearts that cannot be bought. She searched his eyes. In them, she saw neither lure nor pity, only earnest appeal. She realized he believed in her more than she dared herself. If realm requires me, she said, voice quiet, I serve. He smiled, dawn bright, though night surrounded. Then let us forge that shield tomorrow. In autumn chill, the Brotherhood of Shields gathered upon Dragonstone Beach. 300 chosen from Storm's End, Highgarden, even Dorne. Brienne, in cobalt cloak, inducted them beneath sunrise, while Melisandre watched from bluff. The red woman's flame-red hair whipped in wind, and perhaps she smiled. Perhaps not. As dawn spilled gold across waves, Brienne raised her new sword. The assembly repeated after her. In darkness we bear light, against tyranny we stand shield, for the helpless we draw no coin. For justice we yield no ground. Seabirds soared overhead, shrieking exultation. Renly, standing next to Stannis, clapped first. Us rolled across the strand, a thunder gentler than war. Brienne lowered blade, heart steady as tide. The kingdom yet fractured in places. Rebels still skirmished. Winter edged closer. Shadows would return, as they always did beneath mortal suns. But when they came, she would be waiting, torch in one hand, shield in other, unbreakable. And so the Rainbow King held court beneath banners bright, and the realm dared hope again. Qian. Moonlight bowled silver ripples across the black water, scudding beneath the open shutters of Renly's solar, where parchments lay scattered like gull feathers. A single candle guttered low, singing the seal of one such scroll. Stark wax, direwolf imprint half melted. Renly sat cross-legged on a divan, tunic unlaced, eyes red-veined from hours bent over treaties. Beside him crouched Brienne, shoulders unarmored yet broad as rampart stones, turning each parchment so he might read the next with minimal reach. The silence had grown companionable. Crackle of wick, distant hiss of kitchens, sterilizing cauldrons, gull shrieks muffled by glass. "You should sleep," she said at last. "I will, when winter ends." A rueful smile. Does the shield captain neglect her own rest? My men hold the walls. She dipped quill into ink, signing off on lantern requisitions. Sleep comes when duty is satisfied. He leaned back, gaze tracing candle reflection on ceiling beams. Then we are doomed to nocturnal brotherhood. A rap on oak split the quiet. Davos Seaworth entered without flourish, carrying a rolled chart that smelled of brine. He bowed, eyes flicking to Brienne with the respect of a man who had crossed swords and lived to trust. "Your Grace, Captain, our scouts from Maidenpool returned." Renly gestured him close. Davos unfurled the chart. A watercolor of eastern coasts, annotated in charcoal. Red circles marked Lysine sails off Cracklaw Point. Green circles at Duskendale. A jagged black X over Massey's Hook. Lysono Mars cell sails have thrown in with Euron Greyjoy, Davos reported. Their long galleys raid villages too small to merit ravens. They snatch young lads for oars, and leave elders headless on stakes as sigils. Renly's jaw nodded. And the Lords Declarant of the Vale? Gathering militia to seal mountain passes, but little more. They fear Lannister gold in the Iron Bank. Brienne studied the chart's blue strokes. Euron spreads terror over breadth, not depth. He has no anchor. Me. Davos nodded. Yet terror outruns ravens. Fisherfolk flee inland. Towns mislay tithes. Hunger breeds revolt faster than swords. Renly exhaled. Stannis will not be back from Old Town for a month. The Reach fleet keeps the Mandermouth. The Arbor's best remain blockading Sunspear after rumors of Dornish unrest. I cannot strip King's Landing for one reaver. "I will go," Brienne said. Renly looked up, startled. She continued. "A swift column, 80 mounted, 200 foot. The Brotherhood of Shields rides light. We can strike ports, one by one. With Davos to pilot rivers, we surprise Euron's outriders, take a captive or two, learn his flagship, mooring. Benton." Davos tapped Massey's Hook. "Hide in the marsh channels." When his longships nose in for slaves closed the jaws. Renly pinched bridge of nose, weighing. "Very well. But I send Sir Loras with the Rainbow Guard to reinforce you. The people must see color and sword together." Brienne met his eyes. She sensed a deeper plea. Protect Loras from melancholy that had dogged him since Garland's maiming. "As you command." Dawn had yet to Pinken Towers when she left the solar, boots thudding down marble. By second cockcrow, she was strapping mail over Gambeson. Dawnshield's fuller caught first pale light, and for a breath she felt again the hush before that fateful duel. Fear coiled with purpose. She found Loras in the tilt-yard, running practice passes against Quintons, though the hour was blue with chill. Hoarfrost glittered on his lashes. His charger snorted plumes. She waited until he dismounted, sweat steaming off silk gambeson. "Ride with me east," she said. He wiped brow, weariness flickering. "King's orders." "Mine." "The king agrees." He slid sword into scabbard. "I'm tired of walls." A ghost of his old grin. "Let's see if Greyjoy bleeds salt or blood." 3 mornings later, the Shields, blue cloaks pinned by pewter discs, departed the city's river gate. Loras and his rainbow cohort trotted behind, banners snapping. Violet, indigo, crimson, a waking prism slicing dawn fog. Small folk lined muddy streets, shouting blessings. Bread crowns for mercy of the rose, shields for the children. Someone tossed garlands of winter lilies. Petals stuck to Brienne's greaves like pale moths. Renly and Margaery watched from the parapet above the gatehouse. He raised 2 fingers to brow, a soldier's salute. She mirrored. Brienne felt a warmth bead behind sternum, a tether of trust stretching as the city fell behind. They made swift time on the Roserad, hooves beating cadence. At Bitterbridge sunrise, Loras rode beside, reciting names of every tree he passed, a Reachman's habit born of orchard feasts. She listened, offering nods, letting the rhythm braid into her vigilance. At dusk near Hayford, riders of the Vale flagged them, Sir Lyn Corbray in plate scuffed by mountain skirmishes. He carried a letter from Lady Anya Waynwood. Arryn loyalists would join campaign if granted share of Greyjoy plunder to rebuild Gulltown docks. Brienne sealed approval with Renly's pre-signed blank order. Alliances now wove like fishing nets, each knot needed checking. Near Maidenpool, they found charred timbers where a fishing hamlet had stood. Crows picked at corpses roped to doorframes. Brienne dismounted, kneeling by a woman whose hands were hacked at wrists. A knotted bundle lay beside, perhaps once her infant. The sight hollowed her breath. Loras swore, voice cracking. "This is no reaving. It's message." Brienne rose. "Then we will answer." They tracked Euron's outriders across salt marshes into Massey's Hook, following smoke plumes that smeared sunsets. Davos' skiff guided them through green channels, walled by reeds taller than men. On the 5th night, they reached a brackish lagoon where 4 longships nestled, sails furled, prows carved into leering krakens. The shields fanned in silence, oilcloth wrapping blade edges to muffle. Brienne signaled. On count of 3 torches flashed, arrows whooshed, sailors scrambling from deck met a wall of flame as pitch barrels detonated. Screams wove with gull shrieks. Brienne charged up a gangplank. On deck, she met a reaver twice her girth, axes in both fists. She ducked left, hooked elbow, drove pommel into throat. Wood slicked with tar underfoot. She advanced, cutting ropes to loose mast. Without sail the longship could not flee tide. Across water Loras led violet cloaks into ship's hold, freeing half-dozen bound villagers. Sparks from burning rigging rained onto his cloak, but he did not flinch, shepherding captives to skiffs. When the last reaver fell, Brienne pulled a wounded raider to the foredeck. Blood spattered the kraken carving. She pressed blade to his beard, voice low. "Where is Lord Euron?" The man coughed brine and laughed, teeth blackened. "Stormborn Isle. He waits for pale bride." She frowned. "What bride?" The man's eyes rolled white, lips mouthed to song lines in tongues she did not know. Life slid away, leaving riddles. Dawn found the lagoon a charred graveyard. 1 longship scuttled, the others seized for transit. Brienne ordered fires quenched, bodies burned, villagers ferried to shore settlement. As they broke fast, Davos joined her on prow. "Stormborn Isle," he mused. "Only Isle folks call by that is Dragonstone. But Euron's mad enough to anchor beneath blasting cliffs." Brienne gazed east where volcanic tooth of Dragonstone speared clouds. "My duty was to gut reavers, not besiege castles." "Yet the kraken coils round deeper schemes," Davos said. "If Euron parleys with Lysine mages..." He broke off as gulls squealed overhead. The king must know. Stannis too. She weighed. Return ride to send Ravenwood waste days. She turned to Loras. "We split our host. 100 keep scouring coast. A score sailed Dragonstone by stealth. I lead the 20. He shook head. "Then, I come." She considered. 2 commanders absent might sap morale. But his eyes held need, proof he still held worth beyond tournaments. "Very well, choose volunteers." The captured longship re-rigged. They set sail under gray squalls, Davos at tiller. Shields pulled oars, Loras marshalling rhythm with warhammer tapping gunwale. Brienne stood prow, dawn shield strapped across back, tugged cloak tight against salt sting. 2 nights in choppy seas, lightning threading horizon. They reached channel of Dragonstone. Basalt cliffs loomed. Great carved dragons jutted from fortress walls like petrified gargoyles. No lights betrayed Euron. Yet in cove below spired castle, an ungainly vessel bobbed. Hull black glassy, sails of translucent film, shimmering green. Lysine sorcery ship. Davos steered into kelp-thick inlet. Anchors dropped soundless. Brienne and Loras led 10 ashore, crabs scuttling across slick stones. Wind carried sulfur. Furnace warm. As they crept up goat track, drums sounded within the castle. Slow ritual thumps. Blue witchfire flickered through arrow slits of the old Valyrian audience hall. They slipped inside a postern where iron bars corroded by sea air surrendered to crowbar. Corridor smelled of myrrh and half-dried blood. Shadows writhed along walls though torches burned steady. Brienne's breath frosted, unnatural chill. At threshold to Great Hall they paused. Beyond, Lysine warlocks in pallid silks ringed a circle of molten bronze on floor. Within circle, kneeling naked, bound, was a woman, hair silver white, eyes violet, Daenerys Targaryen. No, younger, thinner, yet unmistakable of Valyrian blood. Euron towered over her, wearing cloak stitched with feathers of 1,000 storm gulls, smiling like cat of ash. He held a blade curved like Grin, Valyrian steel. Blue flames around circle danced higher, licking ceiling. Warlocks chanted in High Valyrian. Each syllable sparked arcane glyphs in air. Brienne slid dawn shield free. She counted warlocks. 8. Euron's crew dotted perimeter, eyes glazed. She leaned to Loras. Take archers, drop warlocks first. He nodded, signaled 3 men stringing short recurves. Brienne waited breath, then hurled dagger across hall. The blade clanged off bronze ring, drawing Euron's gaze. Loras's archers loosed, 2 warlocks toppled, casts breaking mid-chant. Flames guttered. Glyphs fizzled. Brienne charged. Euron laughed, stepping back from circle. Ah, the shield of colors arrives. Did the pretty king send you to witness crowning of a storm god? She ignored, closing. A reaver blocked. She hewed sideways, spine crack. Loras drove into opposite flank, violet cloak swirling, cutting 3rd warlock dot. Euron raised his strange blade, steel smoked blue. He sprang toward Brienne, slashing. She parried, metal shrieking as if protesting. Shock reverberated up her arm, heavier than mere clash. He pressed, grin splitting face. Steel cannot drink stormlight, woman. She caught next cut, on shield's rim. Twisting. He pivoted, drawing blood along her knuckles. Cold sizzled. Meanwhile, Davos dashed a circle, knelt beside captive, sawing bonds. Flames hissed, licking his sleeves but not burning. The girl's lips quivered. He whispered assurance. Euron feinted low, then flicked blade. Sparks snaked. Brienne ducked under arc, slammed pommel into his ribs. He grunted but laughed again. Good dance. Loras slew last warlock. Chants ceased. Blue fire collapsed into smoking embers. The bronze circle cooled, crimson runes dying. Thunder cracked outside. Castle stones trembled. Freed. The girl staggered. Davos hoisted her. She gasped a name. Arya, or perhaps Rhaella. Brienne could not tell. Euron saw a chine. Rage blurred grin. He lunged past Brienne. She tackled, grappling. They crashed against basalt column. His blade clanged loose. She elbowed his throat. He spat blood and rammed knee to her gut, throwing her aside. He snatched a fallen spear, flung at Davos. Loras leapt, intercepting shaft with his own torso. Wood splintered. He grunted, dropping to a knee but rising again, eyes fury. Brienne rolled, claimed Valyrian blade. It thrummed in glove. Inscription danced. Nadir. Euron roared, diving. She thrust upward, steel slid through his pauldron, puncturing lung. He seized her wrist, wheezing laughter even as blood bubbled. "Storms never die," he rasped. She wrenched blade free, drove again under rib. His fingers loosened, body sagged. She let him fall. Silence crashed, broken only by the girl's sobs and sea wind moaning through arrow slits. Brienne crossed to Loras. Shaft scored his side, not deep. She tied cloth, nodding. He clasped her arm, relief shining. Davos eased girl toward them. "Her name's Elia of Pentos, kin of the last Dragon Lord. Warlocks meant to wed her to some phantom king Euron claims lives in storms." Brienne sheathed Nadir, uneasy. Madness ends. She surveyed Hall. Bodies sprawled, blue tar smoke curling. "Burn all sorcery remnants. Then we sail." Voyage back proved rough. Autumn gales sheeted decks with foam. Loras developed fever from wound. Brienne brewed willowbark tea, sat wrapped vigils. He muttered of flowers drowned in tide, of brothers laughing unseen. She wetted cloth. Promised gardens awaited. Elia Pentos spoke little. At night, she traced sigils on rail, whispering Valyrian prayers. Brienne sensed dormant embers of dragon magic, but no malice. They reached Blackwater mouth under slate sky, pierced by city spires. Banners of stag and rainbow flew high. Gunwale rang with cheers from peers. Renly met them on quay. His relief when Loras limped off plank near tore him. He embraced the night publicly. Then he grasped Brienne's shoulders. "We heard only rumors of sorcery, krakens, and dragons' daughters." "We bring proof," she said, indicating Elia. Elia knelt. Renly bid rise. Her violet eyes studied him with wary awe. "I was stolen from Pentos," she said in thick comment. "Warlocks sought marriage of sky and sea. This woman broke their chains." Renly bowed to Brienne. "Realm thanks its captain." He signaled Maester. Elia escorted away. Stannis returned days later. Ravens preceding with news of faith militant unrest quelled in Old Town. He listened grim to report, then nodded once, telling Brienne, "You've severed Kraken's arm but not head. Greyjoy still raids western shores." She accepted task yet again. Ahead unspooled winters to come. Whites rumored in Nightfort shadows, Dornish sand steeds massing, Korth merchant princes petitioning. Each moon birthed new peril. Through all, Brienne bore shield and torch. Her brotherhood grew, wildling spearwives, summer islanders with coral blades, even a former marine pit fighter. They patrolled roads, escorted grain, broke slaving rings, warned maesters of plague pockets. Loras healed, though scar-itched. He resumed jousts, but with calmer gaze. He sparred Brienne weekly, each bout ending in laughter rare. Renly and Stannis, twin pillars, argued often about tax, prophecy, judgments, but their bond hammered in fire held. Small folk dubbed them day and dusk, one bright, charming, one stern, unflinching. Yet at eve their lights mingled. Years later, snow-dusted King's Landing for first true winter in memory. Children built stag-shaped snowmen along Street of Sisters. Brienne led torch procession across city. 200 shields carrying lanterns to Dragon Pit Hill, lighting braziers that would burn all night, so none feared long shadowed. She paused atop hill, watching flicker across rooftops. Footsteps approached. Renly, cloaked in fox fur, offered flask of hot cider. They stood wordless, surveying kingdom they'd salvaged. "The night is short," he said eventually. "But our watch endures." She lifted lantern, flame steady despite wind. In its glow their faces warmed. King and captain, both scarred, both changed, alive within legend still unfolding. And somewhere beyond horizon lay yet darkness, because stories never truly end. But as long as torches burned in stalwart hands, shadows would find no throne upon which to sit.